All right, so I'm going to talk about, guess what, fundraising. So yeah, it's pretty obvious, but I think it's a very important topic. That's my favorite workshop actually, because what we are doing here, I saw that, the previous mentor was teaching you about investor pitches and pitch decks and everything. But as I'm coming from venture capital actually, and also from with a very strong financial background, I always find it important to let you know how VC works, what are the things that we are looking for besides the pitch decks and everything, and how to build connections. We have 2 additional sessions related to that. Unfortunately, we don't have time for both of them, but it's more related to resource management, and I think we could cover a few ideas on that. So, resource management for me is the basics. So every time, before you start your fundraising journey, or even if you launch any project, even in your personal life, I just cannot highlight and stress enough that resource management is very important. So that's the basics, and here just wanted to highlight a few things. So the importance of knowing your financial resources, because, maybe I just use it in a form of a question, like, what do you think? What shall we signal to an investor? What is a good point? What are they looking for? Yeah? Yeah, so exactly, that's the reason why the financial is important, because they really interested in the financial result. That's the reason why they are doing it. Okay, so today we are going to talk about the investors and everything. So I presume that the previous session was useful and you know how to do a pitch deck and how to pitch. And today, first of all, we're going to talk about the big picture. So when it comes to startups and raising finance, it's not only actually the investors and private equity funding, but you can approach other organizations who can give you money. Important questions and points to consider in your fundraising journey, because that's, as it suggests, it's more about investors today. So, but I show you the big picture, but we talk more about private equity funding. Participants of the VC deal, ways to approach international investors, the financial feasibility, so the importance, this is what we just briefly mentioned, communication, mission, vision, values, introduction. I'm going to talk about it a little bit. It's not a marketing session, but I often feel it important to mention these things because sometimes it's missing. Power of negative feedback, being attractive, the basic materials that you might need to start your fundraising journey, negotiation tactics, and of course, a few nasty tricks and common pitfalls. So again, I really like to do things a little bit differently. So here, I find it important to show you a few nasty tricks that investors might try to use on you to get better term sheets and better results. And so showing you the bigger picture, explaining how to reach out and communicate with the investors and helping you to negotiate. These are the main points of today's session. Any questions so far? Okay. Who is raising funds at the moment here? Yeah, you? How much? 100,000, exactly. How about you guys? You raising funds? Yeah, you? 50,000. Yeah?
We are thinking about raising funds around $1 million.
Around $1 million. Okay. Anyone else? Maybe online?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm just own money.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Cool. So even if, we talked about internationalization, and this whole thing is about internationalization as well, you might need to raise finance to go international, or you might need to raise finance to launch your product. The reasons could be different, but I think it's very important for you to understand the big picture and how can we get financial support. So let me start by the funding time. So a few of you mentioned, like, I'm raising 50,000, $1 million, 100,000. You mentioned grants as well. This is very important because, you know, all of these, I mean, not all of these because the 50K and the 100K were pretty similar. But, you know, when it comes to investor profiling and types of funds, I saw a few differences. So you mentioned grants here. So that's actually called non-dilutive funding because the grant provider or the sponsor or, you know, any award organizer give you this money and they do not take any equity. However, in some cases, you know, the spending rules are very strict and the amount is set, so, you know, it's not negotiable, and, you know, usually it is for a specific purpose. So say, for instance, Ben, as just to give you a personal example, this project is proudly supported by the UNDP's Polish Aid, which is a fund, and I had to write a grant proposal to make this whole thing possible. They give us money, they don't take any equity, but they want to see a few things. Like they want to see that you guys actually learn a lot of things and, you know, maybe a few Moldovan success stories and also Ukrainian people relocating to Moldova, and you work together and actually thrive together and going international. So that's the very same with your startup. There are some awards, especially when I was working at C-Lab Ventures, so when we set it up, we came across a few cancer-focused organizations, and they actually gave money for startups to carry on research, but it was not really a free money. So they had to provide some evidence that they spend the money in a way how the fund wanted them to spend. So on research, with results, dissemination of the results, and so on and so forth. So the good thing is, like, non-dilutive funding can be a good leverage, but you shouldn't take this as profit, especially if it is coming from a fund, because, you know, you need to spend this money on something. If it's an easy sponsorship, or we organize another program called Ventures Try, for instance, where the European Union sponsors us, gives us €1.5 million, and we need to give it to the startups. We have a few commitments from their side, but actually that money is pretty much, you know, free to use. I mean, it's not that strict. So you need to consider points like that. Non-dilutive funding, especially if you're working in a research-heavy environment, could be a very good source. And also if you are working on a very specific cause like cancer, animal protection, environmental protection, this is something that you should see. Has anyone besides the gentleman have experience with non-dilutive funding? Yeah? What was that?
Grant from UNDP.
Yeah?
For development.
From UNDP?
Yeah, from
Cool.
UNDP. We are right now in the process of fulfilling our application.
Yeah, so what was the experience? So they gave you the money and it was a good leverage, I guess, but...
Well, it was, of course, for the competition. We were one of the pre-selected companies to win it, and we are right now implementing our plan for which we have this grant given.
Any other? Yeah?
After many trials, last month we received from the government a grant for the new machines.
Brilliant. Anyone else? Online, maybe? Yes? No? No? I guess no? Okay, so that's pretty much non-dilutive funding in a nutshell. So usually when it comes to startups, everyone is talking about the dilutive funding. Like, I need to raise money from investors, and sometimes they don't even know why. Because I have a very funny story. I know a guy. He is a chairman of the Greater London Fund. That's a private equity organization. And basically, once he was in, I think it was in Dubai or Doha, I can't remember. And there was a guy who had a startup, a fintech startup. And he was a son of one of the richest individuals there. And basically, he asked my friend whether he can give some advice on his startup. And because they are looking for funding. And the guy said, yes, of course. And the guy sent a limousine to pick up the gentleman, and, you know, they started to have a conversation, and the guy, you know, instantly you could notice the guy was loaded. And my friend asked, like, why do you raise any finance? What is because obviously we are in a mansion, it's like a few thousand square meters. It's like, why are you raising? And the guy just said, this is what startups should do, right? And actually this is wrong. You know, if you can bootstrap, if you can use non-dilutive funding or other types of funding, dilutive funding probably is not something that you should pursue because other ones are doing it. However, you know, so let's see where this kind of dilutive funding can come from. So private equity investment firms in the mix, it could be special situation funds, venture capitals. Here I have angels separately, corporate VCs, corporates, investment groups, syndicates. Crowdfunding could be sometimes actually in a form of non-dilutive funding, but it also can come from the government. So sometimes the government, especially in countries where communism was a thing after the war, and entrepreneurship was stigmatized for a long time, like in Hungary, say for instance, or Poland, the government realized that we are lagging behind on entrepreneurial culture. And if you see how much money can we generate for the government, because you open a startup, you start, you know, generating money, employing people, and so on and so forth. So governments start, I mean, it's not only in post-Soviet, post-communist countries, but also everywhere in the world, because the government has a huge interest in supporting businesses because you generate more taxpayers, employing people, especially young people, so on and so forth, and attract talent to the country. So sometimes the government either give you grants or package these grants in a form of non-dilutive funding. Dilutive funding. And setting up either VC funds completely owned by the government and giving you the money. It was probably grant before, it could have been a grant, but they're giving it to you operating as a VC and they take equity in your interest. Usually it's a good thing because if it's a government-backed fund, their interest is to give you the money, you generate taxpayers and so on and so forth. However, on the other side, it creates a little bit of some discrepancy in the whole ecosystem because these venture capital kind of firms are not really for profit, right? So they're giving you the money, they have pressure, they need to give the money to every single startup, not every single, but you know, maybe they have a yearly target of 200 and it distorts the landscape a little bit. However, end of the day, especially in countries like, again, Poland or Hungary, where we don't really have like many people with, you know, significant amount of disposable income, we don't have family offices, we don't have corporates there to invest because they only bring there the operation for like manufacturing or SSC or something like that. I think it could be very useful. But what I'm trying to say here is that when it comes to dilutive funding, you really need to check who is giving the money. So maybe it's corporate, maybe they're interested in buying the technology. If it's a family office, there might be some philanthropy behind it or tax evasion or something. And in the UK, there are certain schemes called EIS, SEIS. If they invest in your business, they get significant amount of tax benefits. So non-dilutive funding is for equity. You need to consider that you give up control and other rights in some cases. I think we discussed the private and government-backed fund. Usually it's mixed. Even in the UK, the government still, however, it's a very mature market. The government supports the venture capitals by chipping in because it's their interest as well. So you can see mixed fund, maybe not like 100% government, but like 50-50 or 70-30 or 90-10 or something like that. So say for instance in the VC where I am in, it's 100% government-backed fund. So we receive the money as a fund manager from the government with a mandate that we need to invest in companies which are not located in Budapest. And we always co-invest with the Hungarian Development Bank. So it's a VC, but it's a government money. What you need to signal is like the financial return, and also you need to see some personal motives, like why the person, maybe the chairman of the fund or the person who you are talking to, the associate or the principal, should invest. And as I mentioned, you give up a lot of control and rights and voting rights and other things. And it makes it the most expensive form of finance. So say, for instance, you have a company now, you just registered. Maybe the share capital is like 100 shares for £1 each. Yeah, if I am an investor and invest now and I say, okay, I give you another, I don't know, maybe it's a bad example, but I'm just trying to find more realistic one. Maybe I say like, maybe you operate for like half a year and you have some traction. And I say like, okay, I see you need money for internationalization. I give you, I don't know, 30,000 for 30 shares. So we have a deal, I give you the money, 30,000 quid. We shake hands and that's it. But later, as I gave you this money, obviously, if you spend this the right way and you go international, the share prices will skyrocket. So actually, you could, now when you are asking maybe for like, I don't know, 1 million, maybe you don't need to give up 30%, but just 10 or, I don't know, 5, because you actually managed to get a very good traction. And therefore, you gave up already 30%. Previously, you can do the maths. The cost of capital is very high. But the good thing is you share the risk together with the investor. So it's their interest, they sometimes support you and so on and so forth. And when it comes to bankruptcy, again, you share the risk. However, I also have here something called debt funding. So bank loans and other forms, but let's just concentrate on bank loans now. Usually startups do not think that's a good idea because they are afraid that they need to pay back the money and so on and so forth. So the risk is not shared here. However, if you check the cost of capital, they give you the loan, you pay, I don't know. And usually there are some loans designed for younger entrepreneurs, 3% paid back. You didn't need to give up anything and that's it. Well,
for Moldova, it's not an option. Our banks and our loan companies do not have specific products for startups.
Really, even the government? Usually, even if the commercial banks don't have it, what I saw, like say for instance, the export promotion agencies have export loans. It's a loan for the government. You don't have it?
No, they will anyway evaluate your
Bless you.
capitalization. They will ask for your revenues, to see your revenue, so on and so on. And if you are, for example, a pre-seed concept design, you are a no-go for the bank and any loan organization.
Yeah, loans are usually for startups in a little bit mature phase with some revenues and maybe some assets or something that secures the bank. However, there are specific startup loans. But yeah, maybe it's not here yet, but just keep it in mind because maybe in the next 3 to 5 years it's going to change. So yeah, the risk is not shared though, but if you check it, like that's the cheapest and quickest way to get liquid finance because the bank's interest, to give you the money as soon as so you can start paying back. While in the form of VC, it can be a little bit longer, you negotiate term sheets, whatever, and so on and so forth. So what I'm trying to say here is when you actually decide, when you actually realize that you need some funding, maybe for internationalization or for any other reasons, I recommend you guys to check the big picture because you might missing out a lot of things. So say, for instance, again, I mentioned the other grant that we are delivering for the European Commission. There we are giving away altogether 1.5 million euros. And I knew a few people, they were about like raising funds and it was perfect for them. They didn't check the big picture. They were focusing on I was more focusing on crowdfunding campaign and dilutive funding only. Instead of like checking, okay, maybe there's a grant for the mobility sector because it was for the mobility. Maybe there is something for me. So that is very important, always check. And Moldova is eligible actually for EU funding. As far as I know, it's considered as a widening country. We still have applications from Moldova, and also Turkey is eligible. I'm not too sure about Armenia, maybe Azerbaijan, I'm not too sure, but and it's worth to have a look. Any questions? I know it was a bit too informative, but any questions, guys?
Do
I have one.
Yeah.
Can you explain how works convertible notes?
Convertible notes. We have one actually in one slide about that, but basically I don't want to go into the technicalities, but convertible notes basically is when the investor gives you the money in form of a loan that later converts, but it really depends on the agreement, because it can be like a set percentage, or you can pay it back, or it will convert. So say for instance what RVC does with the Hungarian government, they do the convert, we give them the equity, they give another part, half of the money, because they have standard packages, comes in a form of equity and the rest in the form of convertible loans. And then they have like different options, whether you raise finance or not. But it would be very difficult to explain it now for everybody, because I'm not too sure how much you guys know about it. And it is also tailor-made by the investor. But the thing that you should know is that the convertible loan is a loan for now that later can convert to equity if you cannot pay it back. Is it okay? You guys understood?
What is? Sorry.
Yeah.
If you finish, I have continued to my question.
Yep. Sure.
What is more convenient, convertible note or equity from company?
Well, I think convertible loan, if you are confident and you predict like a good return and the terms are good and there's not a lot of restrictions, I would go with a convertible. Because you don't need to give up. You give up equity if you need to, but if you're doing well, then it's a safe option. But usually it's never only convertible, it's always some equity attached to it. Is it?
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Okay, so actually this session is going to focus on dilutive funding, so VC, corporate, angel investments, more on the VC and the corporate side. And just one thing about angels, I would be very careful with angels in the region. In the UK and in the US, we have a proper angel culture. However, what I saw in Eastern Europe, and if I go even Eastern, like Turkey or the Southeast Asia, like people like to act as angels, but usually they invest like 10,000 and they ask like a lot of shares in return, and they do not really provide the value. However, in the UK, so there are associations like the Cambridge Angel Associations or Oxford Business Angels and so on and so forth, professionals with network and with significant amount of money, and the government actually created different investment schemes. So actually the startups should register and issue their shares under this particular scheme, and the angels get tax benefits. So it's really, a good thing to be an angel there. While I'm not too sure about Moldova, but generally my experience in the whole region as a Hungarian is like, I would be very, very careful, because they do not really understand still the startup game. All right, so finding and profiling investors. So when it comes to the investment strategy, we talked about strategy before. There are a few questions that we should answer. So say, for instance, why are we raising? I mentioned the story already. It's important, to have some clear motivations. So why do you need the money? Is it product development, internationalization? Why are you doing this? What do you want to achieve with this money? How much, it determines also how much we need. So try to be accurate here. I really don't like when people are telling me like, I'm looking for $5 to $10 million, because what is the problem with that?
5 to 10 is
Yeah, it's 5 million, what's the difference? The problem with that is like $5 million, because for me, it means that you didn't do your resource planning, you don't know how much you need, you don't know how do you want to spend, you don't know nothing about your market, you don't know nothing about your product, so thank you, but no thank you. Sorry, that's it. So how much we need for what? I really like to see in pitch decks like percentages. Okay, we're gonna need 30% on product development, 10% on marketing, and I want to see the business plan that actually support that idea, behind it. When is it needed? You know, a very common mistake, like when I was more in the UK, people, I mean, still, Tomasz, you know, maybe you can share a few things about it. Like, we having these LinkedIn messages, like, you know, random people adding me on LinkedIn and asking me to help them, to connect them with investors in 3 months, because they saw that, you know, actually in their home market, they want to raise 500,000 in their home market, but 1 million in the UK, because they saw that the rounds are bigger and the investors are very quick. Not for you, my friend, because, you know, how on earth, you know, you want to close a deal within 3 months in the UK because you saw some industry benchmark if you don't even have a traction in the UK. And, you know, they do not really assess, you know, how much does it take. They leave it to the last minute. So when it comes to like the fundraising strategy, again, check your business plan, check your resources, check your goals, and then you can have a rough idea like, okay, this much I need, by then.
Yeah, I mean, we used to work with startups and the BD or fundraising, etc. And we still get some requests, but they immediately want us to do investor matchmaking. But it's not how it happens, right? Because we need to do the due diligence first, whether they have the right fundraising strategy design and raw materials and everything, based on which you can do the profiling and the outreach to investors. So it's really interesting to answer all these questions first before you start doing anything else.
Yeah, and usually, so what is the best option? Here, you know, what is the best option for me? Maybe there are some grants. If it's just a small ticket, 50,000 or 100, maybe you should try a grant. Maybe there is something available for you. You know, is it a corporate VC that maybe you need some, you know, maybe you should operate in a venture client model, say for instance. So what is the best option short and long term? Don't just like jump on the investors because they have money, because, you know, this is not how it works. What do we know about the option? So again, you know, what do we know about, if it's an investor, what can they provide us? If it's a grant, how are the spending requirements, and so on and so on. What is the return for the funding party? So here, again, what are they looking for? Lucrative business opportunities. So we should signal like a strong exit potential. Or if it's a venture client unit model, like how you're going to create value for the corporate investor. If it's a grant, the same way, you know, it's like the dissemination, how many people are going to, you know, on how many people will you make an impact, and so on and so forth. Which type of investor would be the best one? So it was on slide 5. We pretty much covered that. Is it an angel, corporate, family office, corporate VC, other private equity firms? Maybe for you, a special situation firm is the best option. You probably want to show how well aware you are of the private equity sector, but the private equity sector is not only about like VCs and family offices, yeah? There are things like special situation funds buying out companies completely, I mean, more or less replacing the management, giving it us if they like the technology. Usually it's more for traditional businesses, but you know, it could be an option. You need to check, you need to do your homework. And also, what can we get beyond the money? So maybe they offer skills and mentoring in the team. So maybe the investors, I worked with a VC, I can't remember their name, it was like some pharmaceutical companies, VC, but not as a venture client unit. What they offered, they gave the startups the money, they left them some room, but they actually prevented them for further fundraising. They actually wanted to invest always in the following round and tailor-made products and actually branded as their own portfolio. Maybe this is what you need, maybe not. Accelerators usually provide funding plus mentoring. Also network to other investors and partners. Like Tamás did a session last week for Eggy Group. You know, it was Eggy Group's accelerator. There, you know, it's their interest to provide the startups with the best possible mentors ever, because they want to sell their investment, and also providing the network, very important. Maybe they're going to give you access to customers, again, venture client unit model with a corporate VC or sector-specific accelerators. They can give you visibility or even governmental support if the VC is sponsored by the government or partly or fully funded. The government can open a lot of doors, PR coverage, so on and so forth, access to, you know, governmental programs, sponsoring your trips to, I don't know, countries which are strategically important. So a lot of other things. Anything else? What do you think? either on the question side or support, what you can get. Maybe it's a little bit like late nights, like the third session today, but anyway, people online? Okay, that's not yet.
I don't have questions.
All right, cool. So let's see a few things. So here is the convertible loan option that you mentioned. So yeah, points to consider. So the following rounds. Okay, so I'm raising now. I met with a guy. He was a founder of a medical startup, and I remember that, you know, they signed a term sheet with an investor where the investor actually owned 90% of his business. The guy was happy because they had a deal. Like he had like more kind of like employee mentality, so not the entrepreneurial. 90% was taken, salary was offered, security, access to customers, so on and so forth. But actually, you know, for me, it wouldn't be an option because what if things change, you know, on the long term? The same can happen, you know, with an angel. You know, I mentioned they won like a lot of equity for pretty much nothing. How attractive will my company be for the next round if someone already took 30%? What can I give to the investor? Or how will the term sheet look like? Of course, there's a dilution and anti-dilution protection. You know, I don't want to get to the details here, but you can think of things like that as well. But for me, the most important thing is like think through the valuations, you know, the equity, how much is it going to worth, how much are you willing to give up? Rights and type of shares for the investment. Here, actually, we have, you know, normal shares comes with voting rights, employee vesting schemes, ESOP, you know, employee share options, preference shares without any voting rights, say for instance, but you know, this is what you determine. So it's a thing in the UK. I'm not too sure you have it. We don't really have it in Hungary. But if you're raising in America or in the UK, this is a thing. So you actually define what kind of rights you're going to give to the investors who are holding preference shares. Convertible loan options, debt securities with warrants, paid on revenues, not on profit. But in these days, there are also many other stuff like tokenized fundraising. Say, for instance, I met a guy, you know, he's a founder of Consilience Ventures. What they do is basically you can raise through tokens, without giving up any equity. For me, the concept is still wide, but it could be viewed in a similar kind of fashion like how we view the preference shares. Yeah. Go for it, Dumitru.
Yeah, I have a question about the ESOP. If we can find some recommendation in this field or some schemes, I don't know, some more info, how we can make this ESOP in our team.
It's very difficult to give generic advice here, but what I would suggest is check similar companies, how they solved it, what they offer, and also speak with the lawyer. I'm gonna have a separate slide about it because I'm afraid it's the same issue with the convertible loan. It's like very difficult to give you very generic advice. I just wanted to highlight that this is something that you need to think about. Or if you have mentoring sessions together, maybe we can see a few options. I think you booked yourself in with me, right? Today.
We could book that if we meet with everyone. No, actually, someone booked for us. Yeah, so okay, can someone book that?
Well, I remember.
Yeah, we go. We have only 4 meetings in 6 months. Our company has only 4 meetings and we have 6 members. Okay, I have a question.
Yeah, go on.
It's more or less clear how the valuation is done for companies that already have some traction. But how do you do valuation for companies, startups that are in seed, pre-seed?
Shall I tell you the big secret? No proper evaluation methods available at the moment. Your company only works what the market is willing to pay for it. So this is how it is. We check industry benchmark traction and, you know, discounted profit, cash flow methods and so on and so forth. No one cares. It's like, seriously, and usually, as I said, the different kind of investor sets the trend. So if, say, for instance, again, sorry using too much Hungarian examples, but you know, this is very handy because I know the market very well. You know, it's like the government has like set packages. 9 million Hungarian forint, 40 million followed by a 40 million convertible loan, another 60, 120, and then, you know, some others. You know, tailor-made above that because it's a lot of money. And then this sets the trends. So we know more or less how much it should worth. The UK is the same. We check, you know, the funders. There are no proper valuation methodologies. Checking industry benchmarks, similar companies, you know, what is their worth at the moment. You know, trying to compare, but realistically speaking, it's the same, as I said, like how much they're willing to pay for it. That's determines it. But it's a valid question. Okay, just last thing here, life after fundraising. So try to consider investments and fundraising as a kind of a marriage, yeah? So the investor, if they join, they're gonna be part of your company, even if you don't like them. And yeah, the reporting can be extremely difficult. Maybe they wanted you to do things that actually you feel completely useless. You need to achieve certain milestones. Usually the money arrives in tranches, so they don't give you the full 1 million, but they're gonna say like, you know what, I give you now 500K, and let's examine how you spend it. And if the contract is crafted in a way, they are obliged to, you know, not giving you the rest. So the milestones, how you're gonna achieve them, so on and so forth. So life after fundraising is very difficult. Don't be so euphoristic and optimistic about it. Investors are not your friends. They can support you, but actually, you know, consider what is going to happen after. And here I just want to say, because it's about like investor profiling from this slide onwards. And here I just really want to say a few hints like how we accelerators assess whether the partner is good for our portfolio company. So you need to consider a few things. So first of all, what is the fund structure? How many funds do you have? This is something that I always ask as a first question. Why? Because if it's just one fund, first fund, you know, and I see the structure and I don't see much expertise, for me, it's a question whether these guys know what they are doing. How many funds do you have? Again, an important, maybe just the first fund or maybe the third or the fifth. I know that these guys probably in the game, they know a lot of people. It also suggests that they probably can help my portfolio companies to raise further money because they already should have a network if they had like 6 funds before, because it's their interest to sell their portfolio. Is it a private, government or mixed? I think we discussed that in depth. Rolling or evergreen or traditional funds. So rolling evergreen funds, it means like the money is constantly flowing into the funds. So the LPs, the funds of funds are providing the money and they constantly invest. The only thing that you need to see here is like for how long these guys are, do operate. Are there any geographic or other restrictions? Maybe they cannot invest in sex tech or gambling, or I don't know, or they cannot invest outside Moldova. That's a common thing. When was the fund raised? Sorry, I just realized that I made a mistake here. When was their last investment? Yeah, that's very, very important. So checking when was the funds raised and when was the last investment, why? Because if they haven't invested, even you can do it without asking the question. Go on Crunchbase, that's a website, check when did they invest the last time. And it happened like, I don't know, 3 years ago, but you know, the fund is valid. It suggests that they are not really active now, probably they are in the harvesting period. So they are not looking for new investment opportunities, but rather they just want to collect the money or to follow an investment in their portfolio companies. What's the investment thesis? So that's related to that. So the investment thesis and cycle determines like how the fund is structured. So when they're raising the fund, they say to the LPs like, okay, the first 3 years we are going to scout for talent and invest, and the second, the following period is going to about like follow-on investment, and actually within 10 years we plan to exit like majority of the companies. For you, it's very important to know. It's a very difficult information to get. You can ask, maybe they tell you, because you instantly know whether this investor is suitable for you or not. What support do you provide, and whether they have co-investors. As I said, say for instance for us, as a micro fund, it's very important that we have a co-investor, the Hungarian government. So, we invest a little money, but we can actually acquire some more capital through the partners. What support do you provide? Again, skills, network, mentoring, government support, venture client unit kind of model, so on. Any theme of the fund, maybe it's a specific sector of tax-efficient investing, as we discussed already. You need to know about it. And if I can give you an advice, like if you meet an investor at networking event or whatever, try to ask these questions before pitching your business. So you save a lot of time for yourself, and actually, the approach, I'm gonna talk about it later, when startups like pitching all the time without any, ask or something, it's very annoying for an investor, but you can gather a significant amount of market intel. And even if the person is not the right person, maybe, he or she gonna tell you a few things. Okay, so you understand what you need to seek, but here on the next slide, I just really wanted to mention and explain a little bit like how VCs work really. So usually this is what startups are missing. So how VCs are created. So usually they think they just like some people have money, they partner up, and that's a VC fund. However, in reality, it's of course, can be a scenario like this, like serious entrepreneurs from the US coming back home, and they set up a fund in their home country and they start investing. That's one way. But usually it looks the following way. There are investment managers, so the general partners, who actually set up a management company, and they start to reaching out to LPs, the limited partners, who are basically the funds of funds. Could be ultra wealthy individuals, foundations, pension funds, hedge funds, any other investment groups who really want to diversify their portfolio. And instead of they don't want to deal with the day-to-day operation of a venture capital fund, but rather give the money to the general partners who promise them to come back with significant amount of return. So that's the idea here. So this is how it is. And why this is important for you? Because if you can find out who the LPs are, very difficult to find out though, and also who the general partners are, and how is the management company, and so on and so forth, and have a kind of organizational structure in mind, for you it's much better to assess whether this investor is right for you. So what the venture capitals do? So they usually do the following 6 things. So sourcing, so finding new startups, that's their job. So the LPs, they do not really want to involve, they just want to diversify their portfolio, they give the money to the management company, so the VC, and leave the operation for them. The GPs should be really, really competent though, otherwise it's going to be very difficult to raise money. However, of course, we could see government can chip in, government could be an LP, other foundations could be, European Commission could be an LP. But if you talk about the private market, then this is the case. So they need to source startups, they execute the deals, so they do the investment, they actually provide support for the portfolio companies, again, with the network, management, mentoring, marketing, and so on and so forth, so it's their interest. Networking and brand building for the fund and also for the portfolio companies, fundraising and LP relations. So that's very, very important. So, you know, the management company and the GPs are always after a new fund, because if the fund is over, they will be out of job. So that's for their interest is to raise another one and another one and another one. Or if it's an evergreen fund, keep the evergreen fund alive. And also internal operation tasks, you know, providing the legal environment, IT environment, and so on and so forth. Generally speaking, what is important for you, you know, and the most important for them as well is 1, 2, 3, and 5. So this is what they do pretty much. And it's very important, so we know how it looks like if we see the bigger picture of the VC, and also very important for you, like, to understand who you are talking to. So the VCs are usually built in a kind of hierarchical structure. General partners on the top, you know, these guys are the top guys. They are not really involved in the day-to-day though, but these are the top decision makers. They have the principals, venture partners, senior member staff, whatever they call them. So again, they are in charge of the portfolio. These guys usually are the portfolio managers, or if the VC has different funds or different products, like maybe there's just one fund, but they have like pre-seed, seed, and growth portfolio, maybe portfolio heads, and so on and so forth. So these are the venture partners here. The associates, so these guys are actually the ones who are helping in execution, preparing for the board meeting, so on. And they also have the analyst. In reality, in small VCs, usually these two roles here a little bit overlap, and the divisions might not be that clear, but it's important to mention that you probably going to speak with the analyst. I mentioned junior member, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't have he or she doesn't have experience. They might come with 20 plus years sector experience, but in the investor firm, they do not have much responsibility. So what they do, they go to events, finding startups, discussing, you know, things, checking industry trends, and if they find something interesting, promote it to the associates. They have a board meeting with the venture partners, and if everything is fine, then of course, you know, executing the deal, general partner signs it, and that's it. So there's a misconception here that you should talk to the top guy. I remember there was a guy from Poland, the same medical program that I mentioned before. So basically he said, like, Greg, I'm really fed up and speaking with these junior people, the analysts, and they don't understand what I'm trying to say, so I'm going to reach out to the general partners. There's no point, they will not read your letter. Seriously, it's simply these guys are not in charge. What they're going to do, they send it back to the analyst. So do not waste your time approaching. Maybe you can try the associates, or if you meet with the venture partner and they like you, of course, it can be an option, but VCs are structured in this fashion for a reason. So yeah, don't try to approach the top guys instantly. Okay, any questions before we move on? Yeah? No one? Anyone? It's either very straightforward or very boring. I don't know. Hope it's more on the straightforward side.
It's actually very interesting, but it's a lot of information and I need time to process it.
Yeah, I try to speak slower. However, I'm checking my watch. Is it lunch like at 1 or 1:30?
No, actually it's at 2:15.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's like, yeah, I didn't change my, because it's CET time. Cool. All right, still trying to be, okay, anyway. All right, other participants of a VC deal, because in reality, of course, it's not just like, okay, you speak with a junior, they like you, they promote your case further and they sign, but the VCs are not stupid, they need a lot of other people. So say, for instance, subject matter experts, they're gonna bring their own subject matter experts, because let's assume that maybe the analyst has some experience, but they want a second opinion because the case is very specific. So they're gonna bring somebody who is like the top dog in the industry or this particular niche or whatever. And he or she will listen to your pitch and write a recommendation what he or she thinks, or maybe more subject matter expert, because if the deal is like extra high, like maybe like above like 5 million, of course they want to be sure that, you know, don't just give them money for somebody and some ideas which are not, you know, viable. Mentors and accelerators, they might want to be part of the deal, or you might want them to be the part of the deal. If you have a good mentor, of course, they are allowed to help you in the negotiation. Previous investors, of course, they want to be, because, you know, probably they are selling their parts if the investment thesis is focusing on that. In our case, say for instance, we want to sell our part very quickly, so we don't want to stick with the company for a long time because it's a lot of dilution and everything. So we would rather just sell it. So previous investors. Your co-founders, of course they want to be there, so it's not just you. And most importantly, lawyers. Yeah, so you had a few questions, like very technical, and as I said, you should consult with the lawyer. Why? Because these guys, the masters of the whole kind of like company law art, if you like. And very, very important, if you do not have a lawyer, VCs can simply just outsmart you because, you know, they're gonna have a lawyer. They are not stupid. So even if you think you cannot afford a lawyer, I think it's a very best strategy. Even if it's a few thousand euros or something, you should get the money, because a good lawyer is a reflection of you. Yeah, and you will not be able to understand and process the text. It's very technical. Term sheets can be very complex. And, you know, it means that you need support. Lawyers must be selected carefully. So, so basically, also you need to know, you also should know that they can give you advice with very limited risk on their side. So, you know, if the selection is not very good, it can be rather a risk, rather a risk than an asset. And even if they have identity insurance or, you know, some other protection, trust me, you will not be able to sue a lawyer, because it's very important to know that they know their limitations, right? So you need to select your lawyers carefully. I'm not too sure whether anyone's parents divorced. My parents divorced, and I remember like my father had a bad lawyer, and, you know, it was a thing like he had to pay half of the house to my mom, and actually he took a loan, but the lawyer didn't report it in a proper way to the Hungarian tax authorities. So when he took the loan, actually the tax authorities viewed in a way that he gained instead of like, you know, paying half of his house. So he had to pay lots of taxes. That's just a very simple example from like real life, but this, you know, that could happen with you as well if you don't have a good lawyer. Always double check and understand their explanation. So even if you think that, okay, it's going to be good, the only thing that I can suggest is double check. It's not rocket science. Ask the person like, where did he or she get the information, and try to understand yourself, because again, things can happen. You do not really need to go for like the well-paid, top, most expensive firms or whatever. Try smaller, specialized law firms who have seen similar deals before. Maybe a small law firm specialized in venture deal. They won't mean that they're expensive. They know exactly that their clients are startups. And, you know, another good thing is like, probably they will not charge you that much, but, you know, the experience will be very, very tailored to what you need. And also try to choose based on recommendations. And also you should keep that in mind that they represent you, you pay them. If you don't understand something, ask the question and they should be able to answer it. Some lawyers are really, I don't know why they do it, but also doctors as well. They give you the jargons in Latin and quoting paragraphs that you will not understand. You can always say like, sorry, I'm not a lawyer. Can you explain it to me in a human language? And, you know, they should, because you are paying them. If not, then just switch lawyers. So that's something that I just want to flag or highlight here as a slide. Like when it comes to VC deals, lawyers are very, very important. Any questions? Yes, no, I guess. Okay, so gathering information. So we know how VCs work. We know the participants of the deal. So knowing your partner is like a marriage. I mentioned that before. So it's like pretty much, the dating is like Tinder here. So that's the first step. So basic information, you can check website, Crunchbase, other profile, F6S, LinkedIn, and so on and so forth. Analyze the analyst. So check previous experiences, comments, what he or she thinks, so on and so forth. And try to find opportunities to bond as well. So if the person is very active on LinkedIn, also always commenting and writing articles, it's your chance, to get in touch. Try to find out who the LPs are. As I said, it could be challenging, but actually, if you have maybe some ideas and you realize that it's a family office and the founder is, the person is like really in anti-aging and they supported products like that, and you are in the anti-aging sector, then maybe, that's your win. So that's your perfect match. Check out the partners and presidents of the funds, motivation, previous experience, strategic direction of the fund. So the bad way, again, on my LinkedIn, you can see I'm an investor. However, we only invest in Hungarian companies. Every week I receive a letter. I have a startup that could be exciting to your fund. Did you check what I'm doing? Probably no, because you are writing to me from, I don't know, India or the UK or Germany, and we are not investing in. So that's not a good idea. So when actually it comes to the fundraising journey, reaching out and so on, and Tamás will tell a lot of things about sales tomorrow, how to do it. Exactly the same methodology. Do not spam people. Of course, I understand you are desperate and you need to try and you need to build list. But even if you have a big list, at least check the people, because you're going to have a bad reputation. This is a small industry. Ways to reach out. So cold calling, if you have the list already, so you check the people and you think it's a good thing, you can always cold call, message, email. Crunchbase, Sales Navigator is a good tool for that. On platforms, so actually list yourself on those platforms. So SB, F6S. SB is a very Central Eastern European, though F6S is more European. At events, even if you do not pitch, you can do some networking. Try to attend keynotes of investors and comment them. It's a good opportunity to get in touch. Personal recommendations. So even if an investor say, I'm not your investor, thank you, we are not moving forward with the deal. Can you help me to find someone in your network who is relevant? Or maybe some other startup friends or consultants or your mentors can help. Third-party brokers and matchmakers. Here, people often think I can just approach people and I'm gonna pay success fee on the deal. I wouldn't recommend. If someone says yes for this, probably it's not a professional. This is how it is. If you want somebody to represent your company without actually knowing you and working with you and promising you to get funding, it's not a serious. I wouldn't spam my investor network with a startup who I don't know, or I do not think it's a good idea. So be careful with that, but some people are very good. Important thing, start to build your investor network well before you need to fundraise. Use CRM systems, record everything, feedbacks, testimonials, and so on. Why? So just an example, when I was doing setup, there was a guy, his name was Dulek. He was working on a product with his team. It was an organ on a chip, so they put the microchip on a tumor and they analyzed the tumor and how it reacted for specific treatments and so on and so forth, so they could tailor make the treatment. And basically what the guy did, every quarter he sent out a letter, it's like a newsletter or whatsoever, and basically, just updated the people, his network, we achieved this. We have a collaboration with this hospital. We can now treat this type of cancer, so on and so forth. And he never asked for any money, but I knew that people are reaching out to him. Oh, it's very good, I want to hear more. And, when he needed the money, of course, he tried to prolong the process as long and postpone the investment as long as it was possible. He already had 5-10 committed people, soft committed Doben, who were ready to support him. And always take care of the legal side, so due diligence, it's very important. NDAs if you need to share some confidential information. sorry, yeah, you need to sign that. You need to have it ready. So that's it. Okay. So the most important question, like, am I attractive? So, you know, I mean, not me, but your business. So what should we signal to the investors? We discussed this already. Financial return. So is my idea or product or project feasible? So the business model is very important. So who pays to whom, how much, when, and why, you know. And the business model must be rock solid, even if it's a social product, it's saving the environment with plastic. If there is no, you know, rock solid business model and you cannot prove that you're generating revenue and the investor who gives you the money going to see some return, then it will be difficult. Because there's a misconception. Sometimes social enterprises like approach us and, you know, we ask about the business model and finances and they do not think that's important. It's very important for everybody. So what shall we signal? So financial return, evidence-based, sound, prediction done by professionals. So if you don't know nothing about finances, ask someone who can help. So say, for instance, this is what we do at Ice Hub. We have a friend. We worked together in the past. The guy participated in, I don't know how many deals, but a lot. And, you know, he does these kind of things, say for instance, checking the predictions. Is it in line with your business plan? Is it in line with your roadmap and so on and so forth? Exit, very important. Like, you need to have a kind of exit strategy. If it's not like a proper one at the moment, but still, you should have some directions because this is what the investor wants to know. Return, so on and so forth. Comprehensive strategic planning, of course, we discussed that, roadmaps, so on and so forth. You should signal market demand from the beginning, traction, case studies, feedback, testing, trends. Team, I'm going to have a separate slide about that. It's special, especially in the early days, but later is more like on the professional side. Professionalism, so quality of communication. So seriously, if you have a pitch deck and if you're raising funds and you try to raise like 100K or 1 million or whatever, more than 1,000, let's put it that way, you shouldn't go cheap on the design and the materials. Because this is what you send out to them as an investor should see that, you know, these guys are good. The materials that I received from them is professional. It is actually not painful to watch. So a designer can cost you 200 maybe maximum euros. And, you know, all the materials should be done, you know, in this fashion, even your communication as well. Whether you send out an email, make sure, you know, it doesn't have any mistake, so on and so forth. ChatGPT can help, by the way. Honesty and transparency, so be clear with your barriers, potential difficulties, life events, like in female founders, I think we have a few here in the program. You know, maybe people will ask questions about like pregnancy plans or, you know, how you're going to see your maternity leave. Be honest, you know, and try to come up with, or even if there is like a missing skill in the team, they can ask like how you should mitigate, how you plan to mitigate that. You know, be honest, and yeah, basically that's very important. And do not try to cover things as they're gonna find out. If the deal moves into a serious phase, they want to know everything. Other important points, how we create value. I always say that, very important. So how you solve problems. Is it a valid problem? What is your personal motivation? How you contribute to the society. It's also very important in these days. You should really signal some impact. Why are you different? Faster, cheaper is not enough. You know, if you're faster, cheaper, like everyone else. What is the specific differentiator? So yeah, this is what you should signal. And let's talk about the team because it's related to this slide here. So make sure you select your team carefully. Again, if there is some tension in the team and an investor notices it, then again, you know, it puts you in a very bad light. It's an instant red flag. In many cases, startups cannot get the funds because the investors see like either the necessary skills and competencies are not represented, or there is tension in the team, or the team is too small or too big. premature scaling again on the team dimension. They start to hire people which they don't need. So again, it's bad management. Motivations must be clear within your team. So you should know as a team, like who is responsible for what and what you should achieve. What is your motivation, commitments, responsibilities, rewards, why you should do it, what is your input and what is the reward. I have a few experience in this matter that I want to share. Basically, whether if it's an employee or a business partner, if you see that they are not committed, or they are trying tricks, or they are not trustworthy, fire them straight away. Don't even give a second chance. Maybe a second chance, but never give a third chance. So that's my experience. I work with many people, and I know I'm not a 50-year-old somebody, but my experience is like, if people, especially your business partners, if they do not really put the effort in, straight away fire them. That's, sorry if it's harsh a little bit, but it's like, this is the reality. And also consult with a lawyer and sign a syndicate agreement. Very, very important, because exactly, because things can happen. Like you get the funding and your funding partners say, oh, actually I need to step down. Happened with me twice. Thank you. What should I do without you then? I just feel my life is, is changing and I need to move to another country. And we didn't have a syndicate agreement. It was either, one option, closing the company. Basic questions for the funders to answer. So investors gonna ask these questions. I just prepared a few ones, not that difficult, not the difficult ones that, some questions that you should think about. So who are my customers? So what is the customer segment? Why them? What problem do I solve? Is it a valid problem? How valid the problem is? Is it just a nice to have or a must have? Would people pay for it, especially in your early days, or if it's internationalization, it's like I want to see some traction on the local market. How much? What is the industry benchmark? Industry benchmark is very important. What are my entry barriers here? Why I couldn't go to the particular market, or why I cannot scale? Who are my competitors? Very common thing, startups say to us, like, we don't have any competitors. Was the statistics on that, Thomas? Like usually how many competitors? 29. According to HubSpot, if you say you don't have any competitors, you have 29. That's a statistic. I did my own research. When people said to me, I don't have any competitors, on an average I found 5.
Normally, and second statistics, normally you have 3 to 5 direct competitors and 10 to 20 indirect competitors. And we haven't discussed the 10 to 20 competitors.
Yeah.
So just to keep this okay.
Yeah, very important. And why does it not exist? So why do you think, what's the unique differentiator, or why no one did it before, And also I would just add a few questions, but actually we have a game here on the next slide. So let's wait for that, because I'm not sure how much time we have for a game, but still. So what if you have an investment meeting with a potential investor and they give you negative feedback? So it's, what happens? You probably go mad, but actually that's the situation here. So if you are in the army and they try to train you, they're gonna put you in a very bad situation. Yeah, because bad things gonna happen with you in a war, or could happen with you. And even if the investor gives you a very honest feedback and how the investors, as I said, especially the older ones, they don't give a shit, sorry for my French, but they just tell you straight away, like, it's not a must-have, it's nice to have. I don't see the exit potential. I don't see your team is competent. So yeah, sometimes things happen. And actually, maybe you should, instead of like protecting yourself all the time, because that's the natural response, you should listen, because maybe they're saying the right thing. And sometimes, failure is just only a matter of time and perspective. Yeah, I mentioned, I failed with my 2 business partners before, so on and so forth. But now I learned a lot of things. So matter of time and perspective. Better to fail early. So if you see that the 5 investors said to you the same thing, is not scalable, say for instance, that's a very common. Maybe they are right. Yeah, and it's better for you to rethink the business model or maybe just leave the project. Because sometimes you're just going to waste your time, money, and energy on it. So actually, that's something that you should consider. And make sure you keep yourself unbiased. So do not try to convince yourself that your product or service is a good thing. Listen to the feedback, not just investor feedback, but also customer feedback as well. Of course, positive feedback is also important, but for me, negative feedback is the most important one. So maybe I'm gonna have a feedback after this session, like, Greg, you were speaking so fast. So I know that next time I'm gonna calm down a little bit. However, it's just a time pressure now, but already I received the feedback that the information is too much. Yeah, for me, it's a valid feedback. And this is how we make these sessions more and more engaging. All right, we should have a game here, but we don't really have time. But I was wondering, maybe you should ask, or maybe you should share some example in terms of like any negative feedback that you had, like very difficult questions that you couldn't answer. Anybody, even from the audience, online audience, I mean. Any like hard questions that you ever received and you couldn't answer, any the most important negative feedback in your life? Is everyone so positive here? No one received any negative feedback?
Not with this startup, but first
Yeah, any.
With my co-founder, I never go to the angel investors community here in Moldova, and one of the investors told my partner, it's your first startup, so you will fail. I'll not give you money now. You come to me with another idea, and we still manage to like stay together and give you money. And that's what happened. He gave us next time we came with a better idea. Yeah.
Fair first. So you see nothing wrong with that. Any other similar stories or very hard questions that an investor asks from you, or you think an investor might ask?
About the scale. That's the most difficult question, for example.
Scalability, yeah.
Yes. It was the only question that would all of the investors, not like the donors, if we go and take grants, ask. It's the most annoying question also.
Scalability.
Like, there is nothing else that we care about in my project, but actually there is nothing else they care about. So.
Yeah, it's scalability. If it's not scalable and it's resource heavy, the unit economics are not there. You know, come on. I would, if I need to say one, for me always is scalability. It's like, or the exit strategy, because usually they do not have. That's something. Competition, like what makes you a must have, not a nice to have compared to this. Any other similar questions or similar stories?
Oh, we had a nice story. We participated at Web Summit in Portugal last year,
Mm-hmm.
and we had one-on-one meetings with investors, and that was the first one for me when investors went so deep into technical questions, and I was just not able to answer them. Come on, guys, this is our first meeting. I'm just pitching to you, and you're asking me the stack that we will be using for our ML component. I have no idea, because it will depend on my solution architect, and it's not what I'm pitching about. But that was a funny experience.
Yeah.
In my case, it's also the technical questions are the chemical or technological part of it also hard for me too. But in this case, I understand that from my side, this is the research or the things I need to learn more.
Maybe if it's technology and there is super unique technology, maybe IP patent or something, which is possibly very important for an investor. How much people can copy the technology itself.
Yeah.
It's unique, depends.
Okay, guys, I need to move on a little bit. But I mean, sorry, I just wanted to share because I know we're going to talk about it. Just one advice. So if it's happening in a pitching scenario or a meeting scenario, so what you should do is like, sorry, I cannot I'm not the right person to answer these questions because it can be very complex, but I'm gonna get my CTO after this pitching session to answer.
If I just can add here, like I used to get annoyed or frustrated when the questions were difficult and I didn't have answer. And then I came up with from my point of view, perfect answer. Every time I get a question I don't know how to answer, I just say the right question, the wrong person, but I'll connect you with the right person from my team that can answer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's either a good one or you can somehow signal that's a very complex solution. You want to give a proper feedback. Cool. All right. Yeah, we don't have time for the game. I have this cool Cobra Kai is like asking difficult questions from each other. Yeah, Johnny Lawrence. But yeah, so here just very briefly because we don't really have time. Just a few things. So in terms of like explaining who you are. This is something that I learned in London. Like every management class starts with a mission, vision, and a quick intro. And for some reason, I think it's the same here. I'm not too sure. Maybe it's not exactly the same. But in the East, what I realized that these like mission, vision, values, somehow they are a little bit neglected. However, if you're pitching to a Western investor, it's very important to have a mission statement, a vision statement. And Tomasz, I think you're going to share a few things about like short introductions tomorrow.
But this means?
No, like in general, like even it's for sales, like how to introduce yourself. You're gonna have a...
No, it's making sales prospecting tomorrow. So I'm not gonna cover the later sales stages, like how you can reach the prospects. It's specifically for how to identify and reach out to them. So you can cover it if you want.
Yeah, like really briefly. So what I mean, in terms of materials that you should have a mission statement. So an action-based statement that declares the purpose, fundamental, why you do it. This usually stays with you for a long time, while the vision statement is something that you want to achieve, and it could be changed, later on, like maybe in 5 to 10 years or something. And the introduction, especially even for sales, but for investments. You should have like a pre-written kind of intro that explains who you are without actually telling the whole pitch to the investors. So here I just have a mission statement and a vision statement from Tesla. Basically the fundamental reasons, what they want to achieve by when, and the introduction, it is just like pretty much summarizes who they are. You can find a lot of things on the internet, like brand statements. They are different, like how you create an introduction. I recommend you guys to have,
And ChatGPT.
And ChatGPT.
And how to along with this. So if you give ChatGPT like who you are as this kind of startup, ChatGPT can create this for you.
Yes. Okay, anyway, we don't really have. So the reason why it was important, because I'm gonna share a few things that you should have before you start the fundraising journey. So online presence, very, very important. So you have a web page, obviously, I presume. Sorry, man, I see you take a picture of every slide. I'm gonna send you the presentation, so you don't need to. I just wanted to mention, but it's good. So online presence. So I presume you have a website, but very important that if you are raising funds, you should list yourself on these professional pages, especially Crunchbase, F6S, Westby, Dealshare, even Pitchboard. I'm not sure whether you can list yourself anymore. Also on LinkedIn, because this is kind of the tool. So they're gonna, if you are there, the investment scouts, the analysts, or even for programs like that, we checking these databases, and this is how we find the participants. And what is even more important here is the investor-focused materials that are created by you. So what I suggest, have at least a one-pager. It doesn't need to be a one-pager, a short brochure, 1 to 2 pages. Introduction, something that is interesting about you and should create some excitement. The other one, so this is something that you use, like if you have it printed out, you meet an investor, maybe you go to an investment firm or you're pitching somewhere, give it to them, so on and so forth. You're gonna send, here is my one-pager, I'm gonna send you a follow-up email. Pitch deck or brochure or executive summary, it's your choice. I recommend pitch deck because that's the that's the industry standard. However, a nicely designed brochure, I think some cases is better, especially in your later stage. Very important, do not mix the investor-focused materials with the sales materials. Many times I ask for a pitch deck and they're sending me something which is more for a customer than an investor. which for me is very odd but important. If you want to nail this game, have like proper investor focused materials. So this is a longer, more comprehensive compared to the one-pager. It is for meetings, demo days when you are presenting it. It is worth to make it bespoke, so we understood like, you know, how shall we profile our investors and so on. And I recommend two versions. One is for presentation and one is for reading. So if you cannot present, you know, obviously you should have like more text if you do not present because they need to read, so on and so forth. But if you present, more pictures, funny stories, so on and so forth. And also business and financial plan, you should have it, you know, it's a must because that actually determines your strategy. And also if you can create a short summary, maybe 10 pages business plan and just a, you know, extract of your financials, this is something very useful, but you don't send this to everybody, only if the interest is serious. Okay, so supporting materials here, if you do the reaching out, especially cold reach outs, I recommend to have like a pre-written email sequence consisting 5 emails. Tomasz will tell a lot about that yesterday, how to do it in sales, but actually the same strategy. If you do cold mailing, so you have a list, you know that the people are relevant, you can make it tailor-made, but you know, it's better if you have, you know, a proper pre-written sentence and you can just work from that. And very important, if you send one email to an investor, it's nothing. Yeah, so people say, oh, I couldn't raise finance because, you know, I did everything. And they sent one email to 10 investors. It doesn't work like that. You need to push people to get back to you. You shouldn't spam anybody. That's the reason why you have a valid list and checking whether the profile is okay. But, you know, the email sequence, you should have like relevant content, always achievement, the same way, you know, how the guy at C-Lab Ventures did, who just sent some relevant content. Call to action, scheduling a meeting, check my brochure, so on and so forth. And also, besides that, you should have some supporting materials like testimonials, traction, positive feedback. Always ask feedback from your customers. Investors want to see as well, like, okay, so this is something that's interesting because people are willing to pay for it. Awards, press, highlights, motivation. Be careful with vanity metrics, like how many Facebook likes do you have, or, you know, if you have like any mentions in the local press because of nothing. Yeah, be careful with those, but could be very, I mean, if the publicity is like valid, maybe it's a publication in a well-known startup magazine or it's an interview in a Forbes or something. This is something that highlights motivation, professionalism, innovation, growth potential for the investors. Financial metrics highlights positive return, favorable predictions for the investors. If it's a brand new thing, pre-orders could be, you know, if you are raising money from an international investor and you know the target market, some local traction. Very important. It could do the trick, because usually international investors are really afraid because you don't really have a local attraction. And, you know, how would you react if someone from Turkmenistan would approach you to give them money? You know, this is the same thing. They don't know the country, you know, never been there. I don't know whether it's whether should I give them money, unless if they would say like, I'm a company from Turkmenistan and we made millions in Moldova already. Cool, I don't care where are you from, you know, you validated yourself in my home market, which I know. There's an instant rapport with the investor. Verbal materials here. So again, here, just one thing. This is the kind of environment like Wolf Summit or Web Summit or whatever. I only have like 5 extra minutes. Sorry, Daniela. So every time if we go there with Tamás or alone, people come to us and start to tell their life story, even showing pitches on their phone, and we don't ask for that, because maybe we just ask like, how do you like the party or whatsoever, and check us on LinkedIn and instantly, you know, showing us the pitch deck or whatever. I do not really recommend this because it is really, really annoying, and actually it's very counterproductive. Even if you are talking to an investor, what you should do is like making friends, asking questions. Ask the questions that I actually listed. get to know more about the people, because can you sign a term sheet here? What's the point to pitch your life and annoy people why they are there to enjoy the party? There's no point. So, you know, introduce yourself, have a line, you know, a pre-written, you know, we discuss why it's important, maybe, you know, just a few sentences so you can introduce yourself. And yeah, after that, just try to make friends in an events like that. Elevator pitch, important, short speech, speed dating, some matchmaking events which are actually focusing on like short pitching and introductions. Again, the aim here is to carry on the conversation later. So again, you will not sign a term sheet. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is why I think it's interesting. What are you doing? And let's try to build a kind of friendship. And the aim is to carry on the conversation later, because even in a speed dating situation, you will not be able to achieve much. Pitch on usually 3, 5, 10 minutes pitch, demo days, galas. You know, we're gonna have a demo day. Now we're gonna have a demo day at Wolf Summit. And also, you also pitch if there is an investor meeting, you know, preset in an office environment. You also need to have a pitch. Usually that's a longer one, 10, 15 minutes. You know, they are not that strict. They will not measure it, when you need to have like a, you know, well-crafted pitch deck and a well-crafted message that you want to convey. And that's it on that. And we reached the final part, which is the negotiation. And I think this is the most exciting one, because let's assume that you check the, I mean, we not go back, but, you know, check the big picture. They ask the hard questions. You know the investor, you know who you are, you have the materials, you did the sales, you did the investor reach outs, you have all the materials and so on. And let's assume that you reach the point when you are actually starting to negotiate. How to be in a winning position. There are books about it. I think I have a book here. Yeah, it's there, called Ventures Deal. So basically, you should read that, because, you know, negotiation can be hard for some people, and especially if we are talking about startups and, you know, maybe it's your first investment. So there are a few things that I collected from this book and also from my personal experience that you should use. So you should know what you want, first of all. So how much funding, how much control you are willing to give up, you know, the structure after the fundraising, the term sheet, other things, voting rights, so on and so forth. Know your limits. So for example, you don't want to give up more than X, Y, Z, because, you know, actually for the following rounds, it could be difficult, especially if you're discussing the terms with an angel. You can explain, I don't want you to take this much, because, you know, maybe just you need to explain, but you need to know your limits. Also, you know, maybe there is some agreement between you and the funding partners. Be prepared for questions regarding your weaknesses, negative feedback, hard questions, we discussed that. Know when you shouldn't say anything. If you don't know the answer, the same way, like asking technical questions, just don't even try. It's not me, someone else from the team. I'm gonna get it for you by tomorrow or something. Do not get stuck on the details. Sometimes you need to compromise. Everyone should be comfortable, so you shouldn't really, if it's just like, it's not a big thing, maybe it's just like 1% or something around like the investment deployment or something, you shouldn't really stuck on the details. It's important that the other party should be comfortable as well. Let them reveal their cards first. It's as in sales, you know, the first person who says the number loses. So let's just wait for them to present you with a term sheet, and you can play accordingly. Be timely and punctual, very important. So if you are negotiating about like 2 million or something, they expect some punctuality. Once I was raising for a founder, we managed to get him to the second round, where there was actually a subject matter expert, and the guy was in London with his fiance, and instead of preparing, we went to a co-working office and we asked the guy to, you know, come and prepare. And the guy said, no, we just had a fight and I need to take my fiance to a breakfast because we are in London, you know, it's holiday. Guess what? He wasn't prepared. The whole meeting was like a disaster. He didn't present the things how he should have done it. and he didn't get the investment. We managed to get him another one, but I was really upset because it was a much bigger round from a very prominent investor. Discuss and seek opportunities with multiple investors. Again, if you have more opportunities, you are in a winning position. Avoid being too desperate. Start the outreach before you need the funding, the same way how the guy did that I explained. Know your targets, limitations. For example, if it's a government-backed fund, then they have like a strong pressure to invest because they need to bring the yearly targets. It's an opportunity for you. Just go there and just collect the money. Be transparent and fair. Do not lie. Think on the long run. You know, it's a small industry. Don't try nested tricks and so on and so forth. And try to do the negotiation in writing. You know, try to like ask questions, collecting the information, and you can reflect in writing, and it's better. You save it, you discuss it with the lawyer, you discuss maybe with a more senior founder who is your friend, say for instance, and you can get back to the investor if it's the first time or it's a big run and you haven't done something like that before. And a few investor tricks that you should be aware. Again, here is the book, Venture Deals. You should, and also common term sheet mistakes, very, very important. That's your homework pretty much if you take the fundraising game seriously. So the most cruel ones, the two that I've seen. So false promises with no legal obligation. So what they're going to say to you is like, yeah, you look really interesting. We really want to carry on the conversation. And then, you know, it's a soft yes so far. And basically what happens in reality, they keep a lot of teams in their pipeline. And, you know, when they present it to the management, they only select a few, but for them it's better if they have options. And sometimes, you know, the cash is limited, so maybe the fund restructures himself and they decide not to invest in you know, only just in 3 companies this year because the market is going down. And they promise you a lot of things, no legal obligation. For them is like, you know, they were hedging the risk and mitigating, so they're gonna have enough startups in the pipeline. End of the day, they will not give you more money and you cannot do anything, and you stop the fundraising process, so you didn't follow the advice here because you thought that these guys are very, you know, firm in terms of like your deal. Actually, we're not, and there's no legal obligation was signed. Maybe even an LOI is not a legal obligation that can protect you. So that is one, very, very common. Second one, they're gonna keep you waiting beyond your bandwidth. So let's say you are about to sign the term sheet, you started it, there's a legal commitment already, but they actually, you know, you didn't agree on the term sheet yet. So they keep you waiting. You know that you're gonna receive the money some point, and actually before actually signing the term sheet, they're gonna say like, you know, and basically just try to imagine it happened, yeah? There was one guy, they didn't pay salaries for 3 months, and the investor end of the day said like, you know what, yeah, we move forward for sure. Actually, we can sign it tomorrow, but you know, we just had a conversation with the management and we have a new term sheet for you. And you have no choice. Either your company going to go bankrupt, you didn't pay salaries, people are just about to leave, or you take the burst offer. Things happen. So again, investors can give you money, but they are not your friends. So from final thoughts from me, so have a balanced board. Do not mix equity with voting rights. So very, very important. Voting rights are super, super important to make decisions. Control is more important than IP. So if your problem is like raising capital from an international investor, it's like, okay, where the IP is going to be, they not really fussy in most of the cases, only the control. So maybe you need to do a flip, bring the mother company there, the subsidiary can hold an IP, but it will be controlled by the mother company. So this is something that is common as well. Do not present the term sheet, let them do it. So again, we discussed that. And your question, do not think too much about the valuation methods. You know, we covered that pretty much. Try to present your company in a good light, use industry benchmark, and that's it. It was more than 5 minutes, 10, but I really wanted to thank you. Any questions so far, I mean, from the audience? Yeah?
Can you give like one most frequent reason you guys would say no to a startup?
Oh, like our investment fund, we government, so we easily say yes. But the most frequent reasons, what we saw as consultants and we preparing startups, and scalability. It's like unit economics do not work out. It's like not scalable at all.
Yeah, like recent example, like from the last week, the lady from
the Spanish.
Spain, focusing only on Andalusia. She wanted to expand. She was living in Tenerife. She wanted to expand to Andalusia, and she was like struggling with raising funding. And we were like, okay, so how do you see the market? We are thinking in Tenerife, and then we'll see. But yeah, it's you cannot present this to investors, right? It's not. I mean, what happens after? The investors want to see the big picture.
Yeah. She didn't think big enough, and it was not scalable at all.
Yeah, exactly. So we are working on it because now she approached us, what we can do. So we try to cover. So with regard to scalability, you don't understand so many of those things.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Maybe from the people online? It's lunchtime for everybody, I guess. Yeah. So thank you very much. I hope it was useful.